Thanks, man. Yeah, things are okay. At times, even better than okay. At sometimes a little less than okay. Perhaps like everybody else.
Yeah, that's about the best you can hope for. That little less than.
Yeah, if it doesn't, sure. We shoot for not getting too far below.
First of all, I want to congratulate you on your new hit single, "We Have Butts."
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank
It
you,
seems like
man.
it seems like it's taking the nation by storm.
I just I create from the love of it, from what I know, and I don't pay attention to what's going on in the nation as far as how people are reacting to it. I know that there's a lot of feelings about it. But one thing I know, and is that we all have butts. And this is something that my 2-year-old now asks, does he have a butt? Does she have a butt? Does that dog have a butt? And I say, yeah, dude, we all have butts.
I like it. There's too many divisive messages, I think, in the media today, and you found something that really does unite us.
Well, I agree with you, brother. And something that I think about and talk a lot with my partner is, on the internet, politically and socially, there's not a lot of room for nuance. And I think so much does live in sort of the gray zone in life. And one of the very few fucking things that is just as it is that we all have asses. Now, somebody might listen to this and be like, I know a guy in third grade didn't have an ass. And I'm not going to argue with them about that because I don't know that guy.
We were referring to a Facebook video. I don't know if it's gone beyond the Facebook video. We were referring to or I am referring to a
I mean,
Facebook
it's
video.
gone international, sure,
Oh, it has gone
but yeah,
international. Well,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. I
But
mean,
sure.
I guess technically Facebook is international. A, but 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 so to speak. I mean, just watching the video, it is there is clearly just joy and creation. You are having a good, regardless of the subject matter of that song. Like you're tapping into something there, and you're tapping into something that I think probably too often, especially somebody who has been doing this for as long as you have, you can kind of lose. You can kind of get disconnected from that pure sense of joy of creation.
Well, that's my worst nightmare, my worst case scenario, and it has happened. I think, like with anybody with anything that we do, one can lose that. I guess the curiosity or the joy. Um, Certainly, for me, having a 2-year-old boy, that helps get my butt back into the butt songs, but just into the joy of creation. And that's what I that's why I fell in love with music and art to begin with. If we're gonna take a little turn to like the serious,
Yeah.
that can certainly, through with ego, with business, with all of those components that make up a human and a career, those things can complicate and at times um, fuck up the that joyful place and that sort of like innocence, I suppose. So I try to be open to anything that will bring me back into that space.
Yeah, I want to talk through that a little bit. I mean, what are some of the clear points where you felt like maybe you lost focus with that?
I feel sorry. I've got dogs and they're
Oh,
all
yeah, no
here.
worries at all.
Do you guys want to go out? Because if you're going to be here, you guys just have to sort of chill. I'm chatting about butts. Um, well, honestly, I mean, I lose focus often.
Sure.
Thankfully, there's something underneath that continues to percolate and get me back to the essence of it all. Come on, play out here. Play out here. Come on, come on, Spud. Spud, let's go. Come on. You guys play out here. I'll see you in a little bit. We'll see how that works.
It's very funny to be talking about losing focus and
And then losing focus. Oh, I lose focus.
yeah,
That's the story of my life, is losing focus. But the things that have made me lose focus, and I've been experiencing it a bit lately, which is I just put out a record like 2 months ago.
yeah.
And then I went on tour. So the creation of the record, you're in the creation of the record. The recording, you're in the recording. There are ways to lose focus within all of that too. But then you put it out, and I suppose if you're lucky, some people pay attention to it, and you get to do some cool things. And I got to do some cool things. Some people were paying attention. Then I go on tour, so I could feel all of that. So I'm in focus and flow of a tour. Then I get like 3 weeks off, and then my mind starts to um, do what my mind does, which is kind of like start to attempt to quantify things. How well is it going? Um, will there be as many people on the next? Because then now I'm leaving in a couple weeks for the second leg of the tour. Will there be as many people? Will there be more people? Um, I start doing all of these things that maybe a human brain, or at least a neurotic,
Yeah.
sensitive, weird human brain does. I can't speak for everybody, but my brain does, and that gets me out of the the spiritual part of it, which is where I prefer to be, which is um, what I've managed to do for quite a while now since I was a kid, which is to write music, um, to know when the music that I'm making feels good and feels true and feels right for me, to know at times when it doesn't quite, to kind of do it on my own terms, and release the music that does. And and then the insidious part of it is like, I hang out in some places where they talk about, there's a saying, the want for more is never enough. And I really like that, because that's where I get myself into a pickle from time to time, which is, well, is it enough that I'm creating, that I'm making music, I'm playing it with my friends, I'm going out, and it's clearly connecting with some people, and we're having a great time playing it. Well, that is enough when I'm doing that. And then when I have time to sort of sit back and get spun out in my head, so I'm using a lot of words, but to say that's an example of something that gets me, I wouldn't say unfocused, just focused on the things that don't breed joy.
Obviously, you're a family man now, and part of that, it's clear looking at your touring schedule is that you do have to take these breaks. You do want to be home with your family, but then you are away from the music, and that causes your mind to wander from the music, and then that plants the seeds of doubt.
It can, or I can, on my days where I'm more grounded and in the flow of my life, um, I can spend time with my kids, and know that I've got a tour coming up, um, and be with my partner and do the things that I do at home, and those things are also gratifying and fulfilling. So what I'm starting to learn as like a newer dad is that I do need both. I need one to fill the other. Like if I don't get to Alyssa, my partner, a few friends of mine were playing at the American Legion down the road last night. They're great musicians, and they're doing this thing on Thursday nights. And they invited me out as like a guest to sing some old rock and roll cover songs. And at first I was like, that's really nice that they're asking. Not sure I could really make it out. It's a little later. By the time it was like Wednesday, I was begging her, like, please, can I please go out? Because I just needed to see some friends. I needed to sing some songs. I needed to just hear some loud music. So I need that. If I don't get that, then I'm like a strange man, and not a great way. So I need to be able to do that, just like I need to be able to be with my family, and that informs and feeds what I'm doing on tour these days. I feel like more focused and more um, present with the band, with the audience, and with there's more in. intention. I feel like now that I'm a dad with that, so it all kinds of feeds each other. Um, with days, and this is something that I've dealt with, and assume a lot of other musicians and songwriters and authors and everybody that makes stuff and then puts it out. Um, but I've always experienced this. There's like a little time right after you put the record out that the mind and the ego start to get loud, and that again that's never seemed to really help me in any way that I could point to. So
When you say get loud, are you talking about doubt? When you say ego, I mean, is that pride? Is that the opposite of pride?
have you ever wondered, because I do often, like your ambition, your drive as a human animal, and so like where does that start and end, and where does because I'm using the word ego in a particular way, and
Mhm.
people can use it in all kinds of ways. Um, what is the ambition and the drive that suits me? That is like the fire that's in my belly, which I've always had. And what is the there's never enough?
What's the end game?
Yeah, like when I was a kid, I reference this sometimes. When I was a kid and I was in school and I was getting in trouble, and I was in this like alternative arts school that wound up saving my ass in a lot of ways. Um, but I was still getting in trouble when I got kicked out of the public school and put into this school, and then I was there with the administrators, and they were like, "Well, why, um, why can't you just take this a little bit more serious? Why can't you just like behave and just acclimate a little bit?" And I'm like, "Because none of this applies to me, and all I want to do is make songs and travel around." And so that was the dream, like ever since I was a kid, to the point that I was getting myself kicked out of schools and not too worried about it. Um, I guess what I'm trying to say is, therefore, I've been living that dream. So I have everything that I thought that I wanted, but that's not totally true because when I was an even younger kid, I was dancing around to Michael Jackson, and I had my white glove and my red leather jacket. I'm talking real little, and like dreaming of, stardom. So there is this like insanity that lives within me and others, that I want to create something that will touch and be heard by the masses, right? And that's something I used to feel like sort of embarrassed about, or I wouldn't admit because that didn't seem very punk rock. But that is really something that I've wanted since I was a kid. So there's like there's a conflict, I think, there of the dream within itself, which is just to do what I do on my terms, and nobody tells me how to do it really, and I get to travel around and play my songs. And then there's this old dream of like wanting to do that in Madison Square Garden or wherever the place is. Um, and what winds up happening, at least in my life, is something sort of that isn't black and white. That is much more nuanced. There are opportunities that I get to appear on big stages and do really exciting things. There are really quiet times. Um, so I all of this continues to get me back to, and I'm a sober man now too, and in recovery, it's something that we um, talk about a lot, which is whatever the void that one feels inside cannot be filled through a bigger audience, through, in my case, drinking and drugs, through whatever, a nicer car, whatever it is that somebody is craving to make them feel more whole. So it's just, as they say, an inside job. And I'm constantly, annoyingly reminded that it's an inside job because I wake up most mornings in some sort of um, existential dread, and have always, as far as who am I? Why am I here? What the fuck is going on? And now I've got a partner that could sort of hop out of bed and is like, I need 20 minutes, man. Thank goodness she gives it to me most days, but I need about 15, 20 minutes to like get in my body and like realize we're good. We're good. Um, Music helps every single time with that as well to know um, the beauty that is in this world. So many things can feel so so fake and so cruel, um, and that's that's a big part of this world as well.
Maybe this is useful, and I hope this is something that you can take stock of because this is something I've been thinking about, and maybe you could appreciate that you came to this realization at it sounds like at a relatively early age that um, setting for yourself a goal, just the ability to do that thing and survive based on that thing, like that's an accomplishment in and of itself, without having to set these like other that took me a while to get to, that took me I had to be older and a little bit more mature to realize that um success didn't need to be other metrics, success could just be, oh, I'm making a living as a writer. I'm living in New York City as a writer. Right now I'm making a living being a podcaster, and that in and of itself is a goal and something that I have achieved. And you realize that pretty early on. And I don't maybe the fact that you realize that pretty early on has been to your detriment because you achieved that at a
Mm.
fairly early point in your life.
Yeah, that could be. I've always and have more gratitude for that achievement now, but I've always been very listen, I worked at filling the coolers in Wawa and working at the gas station. I got fired from every single one of those jobs. So the fact that I've been able to do it and sustain it for this long, I'm deeply grateful for. I think that wherever we're at, the mind presents us with um, opportunities to fuck us up and opportunities to like sort of lean into that and hopefully learn and grow. And maybe this idea of being uh, satisfied isn't what we're here to to experience. And it is at times, but there's also a part of it that I feel like the as long as I don't go too overboard with it, there is this that fire that kind of can't be
You have ambition, you have drive. Yeah.
right. There's something that is that I do love about that. It's just when I kind of allow it to steer me in directions that just aren't helpful at all. If it steers me towards some inspiration or some bit of knowledge, then that's awesome.
Because here's something that I didn't realize until I was sort of like, reading actually some of the press material around this record and, ahead of this interview was that Strawberry Mansion hit the Billboard 200, which was obviously like a big milestone. And I'm guessing probably something that at that point in your career, you probably weren't expecting, right? I mean, um, so certainly like at least in terms of popularity and reaching more people, it appears, I don't know if it's linear, but it has been an upward trajectory, so things are moving in the right direction. Again, if getting in front of more and more people is a big part of what you're trying to achieve, then things are clearly going the right way.
Absolutely. Um, I think what what my point is that it doesn't really fucking matter. I mean, it does matter and it doesn't matter in the sense that um, if you continue to crave something beyond what you have, then it doesn't matter what you have.
Let me ask you this then. I mean, because this is like, this is, I'm sure it's something that you've thought about. Thankfully, like you don't have to think about it seriously, but this is something that we all think about when we wake up in the middle of the night. Um, God forbid you get to a point and there are just like fewer and fewer people coming out. And you said this in a very humble way. I'm trying to find. I basically. Um, something along the lines of if you're lucky, people come out, and you could take it for granted, but you don't. But let's hypothetically, you get to a point and there's diminishing returns.
Yeah,
I mean, you know, do you think you still have that fire?
yeah, I do. But that is scary, right? But that is also very common in the world in which I live. I remember very, very well. There's this rock club in Baltimore, and we had sold it out a few times, like a smaller club. And I went up to the staff at the end to say thank you, and I remember shaking the one of like the security guys' hand, and I was like, "Thanks a lot, man. I'll see you next time." And he goes, "No, you won't." I was like, "What the fuck what do you mean?" He's like, "Listen, you guys have sold this place out a few times. You'll be playing the bigger spot downtown or whatever." And he's like, "Let me tell you something. I see y'all on your way up and I see y'all on your way back down." And I was like, "Holy shit." Um, for me, I haven't had that.
There's a great Alan Toussaint song. It's the same people that you use on your way up, you might need on your way back
Oh
down.
yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah.
And I was taught that message of that song very young by sort of a mentor guy that took me under his wing and really instilled in me that the personal relationships and being kind and the gross nature of the hierarchy and treating people differently. And he's like, you might run into you get treated differently when you're playing at 9 a.m. at the festival and when you're playing at 9 p.m. at the festival, but don't be like that. And that was a good message for me to hear when I was a kid. Um, but yeah, my career, because I haven't ever had like any big hit songs on the radio. Some friends of mine have had that, or like a huge the age that I am. Some of my friends that I've known who are 5 or 10 years older than me had like when major labels were still shelling out tons of dough and doing all this. They had to live through. Um, that being on the buses and getting treated this way, and then all of a sudden the industry changed and the career didn't totally do this and they had to like get back in the van. I've stayed in a van, man, for 20 years. I keep playing my music. Some of the songs get out there more than other songs. um, I try to put on my band and I try to put on a show like it's our last show every single night, and leave it all out there. So it's been, I think, more of I think with peaks and valleys, like more of a gradual rise into more ears and hearts than it being like any kind of major boost to then have to feel the effects of coming back down from. But do I think I would still have the fire? I know I would, or else I would just melt because I need that in order to exist, really. I need to have the music, and I need to have the connection with the with an audience to when I'm performing and being in that space with, as band, as man, and audience as sort of one.
Yeah, something I'm curious about, you and musicians sort of like who do, similar things to what you do. I don't actually live in the city anymore. I'm up in the Hudson Valley now, but I was living in Queens for like 2 decades. And I used to see you at shows all the time. And for a really long time, I think it was kind of just you, and it was these smaller venues. And given what you do, there is a power in that small venue, just being that like that one guy and that connection that you have with the audience. And as you get bigger and as the venues get larger, the math changes and maybe it gets a little bit harder to have that same sort of connection or that same sort of breakthrough with the audience.
It's a different connection, I think. It's a different dance with a band and with a bigger audience than it is at Pete's Candy Store or something. I don't know where you saw me back in the day, but, like.
I almost certainly that was one of them. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, Also, for me back then, playing Pete's Candy Store for 20 people probably felt like, so it's hard to, it's hard to sort of find that, the level playing field in my mind of what that
Yeah.
what it's been like, I guess. Um, what I do know and what I remember from when I started is there's a feeling when the greatest feeling when I started and remains, which is when I was playing at like Sidewalk Cafe or Pete's Candy Store, one of these places, and maybe people were chatting and drinking and not paying attention, and this certainly didn't happen every time, but it would happen on occasion, and that is when you start to play your chords, there's talking, and then you start to sing, and there's a hush on the audience, and you feel that energy kind of all come together, and that is the greatest feeling for me as a performer and a songwriter. And that still happens, to this day where the band might go off, you hear people back at the bar chatting or there's cell phones or something like that. And then you get them all with a certain song. Again, it doesn't happen all the time, but I've talked to other artists who have reached, sort of arenas and stuff like that that just say they don't dig it because they feel like
Yeah.
they lose all of that. I say I would like to um, play a couple of arenas and then go back to the smaller clubs. But I'd like to see what it's like.
Just had this like sensory memory as you were mentioning the Sidewalk Cafe that I hadn't thought about in a while because the Sidewalk Cafe, um, in a lot of ways, it's kind of this like limit. It was this liminal space between a venue and an open mic, right? Because it was a restaurant, and I'm sure that a lot of people who were present were there just to eat dinner, and you had to win people over. You had to
Yes.
win, and there were people, in much the same way in much of your career as like an opening act, opening for like larger bands, you're like, all right, they're not here to see me specifically. So like I gotta fight this one out. And I really
Yeah.
gotta win over some new fans.
I always love that because to me that's when the pressure is off. I've had to learn over the years when we're the headliner and the people are there to see us, um, to to kind of have that same energy and there's something about when there's people talking. There's something about when you're the opener and you have 25 or 30 minutes that is just like we're just gonna throw it the fuck down, and out of the head and into the abyss or whatever. And some of my favorite shows have been in the. There's just something kind of very punk rock feeling about it. Um, and that's how I got my start. Was I grew up in Langhorne, Pennsylvania. I did not have a band. I dreamt of having a band, but then I got into like early blues and folk music as well as bands, punk rock, rock and roll bands. And with the early folk and blues stuff that I was listening to, I realized these people were, not volume wise, but power wise, soul wise, were creating as much of a noise, if not more, with just one man or woman with a guitar or piano. And I was like, oh, you could do that's something that has been done and one can do. And then when my busking career lasted I am way too needy and I don't have that that tolerance to just keep, to keep going and going and going. But but I learned some things, in Washington Square Park and in the subway and at Sidewalk Cafe and these things. And then I started getting invitations to be like a musical guest at these comedy shows, these great comedy shows in the East Village. And all of that was a great education because nobody was there to see me. At the comedy shows, people would laugh when I came out dressed funny, sort of how I still do.
Were you playing like Rafifis? Was that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Eugene is a friend. Eugene Merman
Okay.
is a friend
No,
to this
yeah.
day, and he. So I could reference all these things with you because you were there, which is
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
But like the Trachtenberg family slideshow
Okay.
players, I
Yeah,
became
and
friends with
invite them
them.
up and yeah.
Yeah, I became friends with them through Sidewalk Cafe, and then they were having a show in this some theater. I can't remember the name, and Eugene came to see them. Then Eugene invited me to come be a musical guest at Invite Them Up, and then I went on a little tour with Eugene, which I still think of as like one of the cooler and most difficult tours of my life for exactly what we're talking about. Is I would come out and people would just start either like laughing, like snickering, laughing, or like here's a musical comedian, or laughing like, oh yeah, here's a musical comedian. And of course, I'd like to think I could tell a joke or two at times, but that wasn't what I was there to do. And so to try and get people to pay attention to what I was doing, it takes. There was a lot of jumping on tables. There was a lot of ad-libbing and yelling stuff. It took me a while to learn that there's like a power in an energetic power in getting quiet. Um, but yeah, all of that. It hurt when it didn't work, but I just remember a lot in those early days that it worked. That I could just with a guitar um, either quiet a room or get people to sing along to a song that they'd never heard, and just sort of go with me where I was going. Um, and I tried to, fortunately, and maybe unfortunately, but fortunately, it's not that you have to try less, but I don't have to try as much when people know the songs to
Sure.
get them to come out and to know that that I'm the person that they're coming to see. But there still is. I've never been one to just want to, and I admire folks that do, and I actually really admire because I don't fully understand it. Just people that stand and play their songs and can captivate an audience. That's incredible to me. I'm definitely I love a show, man. I love uh, theatrics, and so that's always been a part of what I do, and to this day. So I'm still a big slut for the connection with the audience, and I think I will always be.
I always kind of wonder this, is there a way though in which, I mean, obviously, like, I don't know. Do you feel that you were sort of playing a role? I mean, you're wearing a fedora now. You've got fedoras behind you. Like this is who you are. But did you feel like you were sort of like coming out and playing a role? And did you feel like you had to work against some preconceived notion that it was sort of like a gimmick or that you might be a nostalgia act?
Mhm. When I first started, I wasn't really thinking that. When I got that reaction from some people, um, that made me pay more attention to it, because to me it was like the hat thing is more from my grandfathers, who, my grandpa Jack had a closet full of hats, and I started
Mhm.
wearing his clothes and stuff like that, which was
I mean, you can't beat a nice
ridiculous.
hat. Yeah,
Well, they're not for everybody. I think of a
sure.
hat in the same way as I think of a mustache. If you're gonna wear a hat, some men will wear a mustache, and it's clear that the mustache is wearing them. Let's just be honest.
Yeah.
And some men are wearing the mustache, and it's beautiful. And a hat is the same way. So isn't for everybody. But my manner of dressing was just, I loved Charlie Chaplin and
Mhm.
Huck Finn and my grandfathers, and definitely love older stuff, but absolutely never wanted to be uh, like a throwback. If I was taking anything from the past, I didn't want that to be the only
Yeah.
trick up my sleeve. That's for sure. Um, and so yeah, there were times where that would come up, excuse me. And I didn't really like it, but I just keep doing my thing, keep wearing my hats, playing my songs.
Yeah, I stopped drinking several years ago, and people would ask me what the hardest part about it was, and I used to always say it took me a long time to be able to do karaoke again, to just, like,
Yeah.
get out in front and sing in front of people, and I'm wondering how much of, like, I don't know if this is a defensive term now, but how much of that sort of, like, what we call, like, Dutch courage was a part of that for you, and how much that, um how much, if at all, drinking or whatever chemicals played a role in the actual performance for you?
Well, I was dependent on them to do any of it. Um, how much of a role was necessary? Um, I mean, I do it now without. I think I'm interested for you. Have you been back to karaoke since you've not been drinking?
I'm better at it.
There you go.
Frankly, yeah.
And what a fucking revelation, right?
Yeah, for
And so
sure.
that's my experience as well, is that, man, this just came up, yesterday. I was talking to some friends. There's a show that doesn't exist in Nashville where I live. It doesn't exist anymore. When I moved here 15 years ago, that it was like this old time speaking of old time throwback stuff, it's like an old time radio show in a barn. It was fucking great. And I was excited that I had been invited to it. I was new to town. It was a cool, fun thing.
It
And
was like a Prairie Home Companion type
very
thing?
much like that,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, and the night before, I got a DUI, and I spent the night in jail, and I had managed all of my years of drinking and doing everything I was doing to somehow not get arrested, um, and to beat the odds, and on that fateful night, I was, by a cop with a heavy stutter, playing
Mm.
ZZ Top. He rolled down the window, and as he was taking me, to jail, rolled down the window, put his arm out, put a CD in the fucking CD player, and it was down, 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 how, and I was like, "This guy cannot be serious." But anyway, that's a different story.
He was just like a good old boy kinda.
Actually, it was like an old black dude,
Oh,
and,
is it a black guy? Okay.
yeah,
Interesting.
um, but, which made it even more sort of just, like, straight out of a
Surreal.
movie, like,
Yeah.
yeah, very surreal. Um, so so the next night, so I'd gotten out of jail, somebody came and got me out, and I was like, "Well, clearly I've gotta, get to this show, and I'm definitely not gonna miss the show, and I cannot drink." Like, I'm not, and drinking was, an a an addiction, an obsession. I had not played a show since I was a kid, maybe in school or something, um, y sober, and I went, and I was scared shitless, and I was really upset that I had been arrested and all the things that one could imagine, and I remember being up there and being like, "I feel fucking great." Like, I felt great when the music hit, and then that experience allowed me to not drink the next day for the next show, and so, I was very lucky in my then I did relapse, and that's a whole other story, and now I've been clean and sober for 6 years. So anyway, my long-winded way of saying that everything in sobriety that scares the shit out of me, and I think scares the shit out of a lot of people who get sober, is then once you push yourself or are forced to do it, whether it be karaoke or getting up and playing, a show at this old radio thing or whatever it is, talking to a boy, talking to a girl, doing this or doing that, and you do it and you're like, "Oh, I can do it, and wow, maybe I could even do it better than I did it before." That's explodes you into to this whole new world of, well, maybe I can do this, maybe I can do that, and I think that that helps us continue to the expansiveness that I think sobriety for somebody like me, a true alcoholic and an addict, to see that there's not only can I do it, I could do it better. I could my voice lasts longer. I remember the shows. I have more fun. Um, there's just such an expansiveness that comes along with that.
I was thinking earlier, as you were talking about the need to so like go out and see friends and perform and have that be a regular part of your life. How not lucky it is, I guess fortuitous it is that you ended up in Nashville, because I think you and I have, like, lived in some of the same places. As I said, I was in New York for a while. I'm actually from Northern California, but,
Yeah,
like, um, I think Nashville is a good fit, right? Because it obviously, like, it's Music City, but, it does also seem like a good place to raise a family. So you can really sort of you could split the difference there, right? You can have a
for
family
sure.
life, and you can also, like, go out and perform as needed.
You can go out and perform as needed. Also, what I have found in this town is that the creative people are supportive and accessible in a way that I personally didn't find. Of course, there were other parts of times in my life, so that could have been more my doing, I don't know, but
Yeah.
the what I always say is, like, this town changes, the infrastructure changes, the fucking condos and everything are going up, but it has maintained, like, a unique
Mm.
sweetness, um, and, kind of like a family vibe with a lot of the musicians and creative people here that is I find to be unique and really, uh, soul affirming.
Seeing, like, your personal journey, something that I related to. I started uh, seeing a woman several months ago, and she's got a kid. She's got a 7-year-old kid, and uh, one, I think that's a good age to, like, have be seeing somebody with, because, like, you kind of, like, bypass a lot of the hard stuff, but they're, it's not a teenager.
Well, I don't know if you know this, but when I started dating my partner, Alyssa, she had a five-year-old.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Yeah, yeah,
And now Goldie's 9, and then we had our
yeah.
son. Well, holy smokes, what can I even begin to say about it? I went from being very single, pretty fresh off a relapse, and then I came back to Nashville. This is pre-pandemic. Went into rehab, checked my ass into rehab, came out, then we had a tornado, big
Hmm.
bad tornado here, and then we went into lockdown,
So you
and
went through
then
end times.
I went through there was a lot of fucking noise and
Yeah.
craziness going on, in the outside world, and a lot of noise going on, in my brain. And so on paper, you could say that there is, like, no and so, okay, then there was the pandemic, came out of that, then I got with Alyssa. One could say on paper, there's few people that would be less qualified for that at that time, and I think it is so, not to be trite or cliche, but it is so much about the timing and the people. Sorry, my back is, I'm getting old. Um, the people and just, like, where I found myself when that opportunity was there, and the things that perhaps I felt I wasn't ready for, uh, deep trust and commitment, and then now I'm gonna meet your daughter, and what does it mean that I'm even meeting her, let alone now we're spending more time, and all of these sort of things that kind of continue to unfold, and, I think I had where we were talking about, I think, to start the interview after talking about the Butt song, um, where we let our minds fuck us over, and where, like, the spirits are opening the doors, and do we enter, if that makes any sense? Like, um, there's so many ways that I could have run,
Yeah.
and I remember one time, maybe this is too personal, I hope not, but it was really early on, and we had gone out to lunch, and it was Alyssa and Goldie at 5 years old, and Alyssa gave her some money to go to the counter and get her a cookie, and she came back with 2 cookies, one for her mom and one for herself, and she said, "But you don't get a cookie because you're not a part of my family." And it took everything in me to not just start to bawl, and and I was just like, oh my god. And I remember talking to a dude that I don't know very well, but for some reason he was in my life that day,
Yep.
at a particular time, and he said that he had years and years ago gone with a woman, she had kids from a previous, and he's like, all I can tell you is that if you really are serious, just stay, because there's going to be so many opportunities. He's also a fellow recovery guy. There's so many opportunities that you'll feel like fleeing and running, and that you will never build any trust with your lady or with the kid if you do that. So just stay. And then we had our son, and um, it's been I never was, like, a big video game player, but when I was a kid, I played, like, Zelda and shit like that, and, um and it's kinda corny, but it's true. Like, I remember when you would beat a hard level and you'd get to the next level, and that's kinda how, not that everybody needs to do it or whatever, but for me,
You're
in my
leveling
early
up.
40s, I felt a leveling up in my, like, in the ancient part of my being that was, somehow ready for it, though if you and I were talking prior to and you're like, "Dude, so you got a girlfriend, you ready to have some kids?" I'd be like, "I don't even know if I'm ready to, like, make a date for Friday night."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's kinda where I was at. Um, so I think just for me, it was is trying to get out of my own way in my own head, and, if a new world was to open up to me, to see what it felt like to live in it.